Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Halloween, and welcome to the 41st episode of the FilmBrony podcast. I am, of course, Nick Canino, the guy in charge of all of this, and as always, I'm not alone on this one. I have a guest with me who started this whole podcast, so would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, it's October, and as you all know, that means it's Halloween. And at this time of year, I don't know what's the scariest part: the fact that we're still in the middle of this actor strike, even months in. The fact that Blumhouse ruined not one but two iconic horror franchises in 1 month, or the fact that I just got a new backdrop.
Yeah. Um, but anyway, hope you all are having a good Halloween. I sure as hell am. And by the way, if you hear any of the yelling in the background going on later on the show, that means we're about to have late dinner, but I'll worry about that after the show. So if you hear any yelling in the background, just be aware. But anyway, we're gonna do something a bit different this year after we do our usual Blu-ray stuff and our movie reviews, because Soren has something he's gonna be planning later on in the show. So hope you guys stay tuned for that.
Uh huh.
Anywho, we're gonna start with our usual thing, which is the Blu-ray stuff.
All right. I got the moderate amount of Blu-ray, so here we go. I have Best Friends, which is the movie with Tommy Wiseau and Grace Sestero, the movie they made 15 years after The Room.
You tear me apart, Soren.
The Captain America trilogy.
Nice.
Casper. This Christmas Classics collection.
Nice.
The Covenant.
That's a good one.
Easy A.
That's a very good film.
Fat Man.
Nice.
Ghost.
That's a classic.
I also have this pretty rare Golden Year collection. It includes Dark Victory, Dodge City, Gone with the Wind, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Ninacha. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing.
Nice.
Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. Can I take your order?
Oh my god.
The Grandmaster.
Nice.
The Guardians trilogy. Hollywoodland.
Nice.
The Iceman cometh. It Follows.
That's a great movie.
Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris.
One of the biggest surprises I saw last year, hands down.
Night on Earth.
That's a very good film from Jim Jarmusch.
The Prince of Tides.
One of Barbra Streisand's finest films.
Russian Ark. This Sergei Einstein double feature.
Sweet.
I also have a movie that has its ups and downs, but I kind of like it regardless. The Super Mario Brothers movie.
Nice. I like that movie a lot.
The first three Thor films.
Nice.
The Walk.
Nice. Really good film from Robert Zemeckis.
And The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm.
Nice. I only have 3 Blu-rays with me right now, so I might as well show them right away. So starting off is the A24. It's the fantastic A24 horror film that came out this year. Talk to Me.
Heard good things about that one.
It's great. It's a great movie. And what I have here is two Warner Brothers Blu-rays right here. One is the original classic film at The Exorcist.
We'll be talking about that franchise in a bit.
Yep. And last but not least, one of the best movies I've seen this year so far,
I'll have to get that one.
Nice. You should. You should, because it was a great movie, and it definitely deserves to be in that collection. Also, one last thing before we begin our movie reviews, to ensure you all that I don't have a Ghostbusters costume this year because unfortunately it ripped, but to ensure you that this is a Halloween special, I'm wearing this. Yep. The Chucky shirt with the free hugs. Anyway, let's get on with our review. Let's get on with our usual review, starting with the Equalizer 3.
All right, this is a franchise that has never really swayed me. I didn't care for the first one, and I especially hated the second one for its generic story and sluggish pace. And unfortunately, Anton Fuqua and Denzel Washington's best efforts still couldn't get me into this character. Just like the first one, it has its brutal moments here and there, but they're few and far between as you have to deal with a story that thinks it's more emotional than it actually is. Some of the editing's all over the place, and I didn't connect to the boring characters at all. If you like the other two movies, you'll like this one fine, but newcomers aren't gonna get sucked into this movie, and I'll give this one the seal of mediocrity.
I like this movie. Yes, I do agree with you that the editing was a bit all over the place at times. The writing could have been better, and so could have the story. But I thought it was nicely directed. The acting was very good, especially from Denzel Washington, who kills it once again as the main character. And it was nice to see Dakota Fanning in the film again too. The score was very good. I liked the cinematography. The action sequences were a lot of fun to watch, and I found the ending to be overall very satisfying. So it is a solid. I thought it was just a solid conclusion to the Equalizer trilogy. So, and that's why I give it a 7 out of 10 or B. I liked it. It's not without its issues, but overall, it's a solid film. The same can't be said though with the next movie I'm about to talk about though. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, the Equalizer 3 was a solid conclusion. That's why I give it a 7 out of 10 or a B. It was a solid conclusion to the trilogy that I'm glad I watched. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said with the next film. The Nun II. It's the sequel to the first film, where it takes place in 1956 France, where we follow Sister Irene, played by Taissa Farmiga, as she once again comes face to face with Valet, the demon nun. Gee, does that sound familiar to you? I'll be honest, I have not minus the first two Conjuring films and Annabelle Creation, I have not enjoyed any the rest of the Conjuring films. And I was very skeptical about this one, given the fact that it was from the director of The Curse of La Llorona and the Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and this isn't as bad as the Curse of La Llorona, but it does make The Devil Made Me Do It look good in comparison. As you could probably tell, I really did not like this movie at all. Not only is it one of the most repetitive, not only is it one of the worst films in the Conjuring universe, it's one of the most repetitive, cliche, and boring horror films I've seen this entire year. Since this is one of those movies where, even despite the setting being different, it's nothing but a repeat of the first film, and it becomes nothing more than a complete waste of time as a result of this. Now, the only things I liked about the film were that the acting was solid, especially from Taissa Farmiga, who was once again very good as Sister Irene. And Storm Reed also gives out a very good performance as Sister Deborah, although she's not in the movie that much, but that's besides the point. It has great cinematography, and the film has really good production values and costume design, since it really does feel like you're back in 1956. Unfortunately, aside from the story being a repetitive mess, since it's basically nothing but a repeat of the first film, the writing was just absolutely terrible, due to it having characters that feel paper thin and one-dimensional, as well as bland dialogue. Like, When I say the dialogue is bland, I mean it. The dialogue was so bland that it almost led me to believe that an AI wrote this movie. That's how bad the dialogue is in the film. The directing was all over the place. The musical score was obnoxious. The editing was all over. The editing was also all over the place. The pacing was a sluggish mess. It's also filled with cliches that you've seen in other horror films before. And not only was the film's ending lackluster as hell, but there are two major issues I have with this movie. The first being that the CGI visual effects in this movie looked absolutely terrible, since they looked like something you would find in a PlayStation 3 game. Yeah, that's how bad they looked. And number two, and second, I absolutely hated the jump scares in this movie, since they're not only there with no single ounce of tension whatsoever and are only there just to startle the audience, but you can predict every jump scare coming from a mile away, which deflates the tension the movie was even trying to go for in the first place. And at this point, I'm getting sick and tired of horror films relying so much on jump scares without even having the goddamn courtesy of building tension, and instead using them for the sake of startling the audience. It's just, yes, overall it's a smidge better than the first film, but regardless, The Nun II is nevertheless one of the worst films in the Conjuring universe, and that's why I'm definitely going to give this a 3 out of 10 or a D+. Again, it's a bit better than the first film, but that's not saying much.
It still sucks donkey fuck out of the donkey's asshole.
Okay. Let me do this. That's not saying much. It still sucks monkey fucking putes diarrhea up your fucking asshole.
That's the line.
You're welcome. And sadly, the next film isn't even better. My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. You know, I have a love-hate relationship with the franchise. The first movie, yes, the story did feel sitcomish and generic, but thanks to sharp writing and a well-acted cast, I found the first movie to be funny, sweet, and relatable. The second movie, on the other hand, was one of the worst movies I saw from 2016, since it basically took away the charm that worked in the first movie and made it into nothing but a live-action cartoon. But what if I were to tell you that My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 is the worst of these movies? You may not think it's possible, but they somehow managed to make a movie worse than My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. This is one of the laziest and most shamelessly cynical, boring, idiotic, and annoying films I've seen this entire year, since this is yet another one of those movies where you can't help but feel like this movie was made just for the actors to go on a vacation. Now, I wouldn't have a problem with it if they told an interesting, compelling story, but unfortunately, it's not, and it becomes nothing more than a complete waste of time as a result of this. The story was nothing but an absolute joke, since it's a bunch of the story was just an absolute joke. It's nothing but a bunch of random subplots or a series of unfortunate events that lead to nowhere. And not only was the directing piss poor, but so was the screenplay, since once again it featured characters that feel soulless, paper thin, and one dimensional, and the dialogue being absolute horse shit. The acting, although not terrible, wasn't that great, since not only does it feel like almost everybody was phoning it in, were phoning in the performances, but the actor that played Aristotle gives out one of the worst performances I've seen this entire year. I feel bad for him because this is one of his first movies he's in, and yet he was terrible. He was obnoxious and just downright terrible in this movie. The music is a generic mess. This also has some of the worst cinematography and editing I've seen in the movie in 2023 because how it was shot and edited looked like something that was made for TV. It's that bad. The pacing was a sluggish mess. It's filled with cliches that you see in other films before. And not only did I find every single joke in My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 to be obnoxious, juvenile, and idiotic, but if you were expecting the movie to at least have some heart in it, I'm sorry to tell you this. I'm sorry to tell you this, but there was no heart or charm in it whatsoever. And even when there is, it feels so cliched and sappy to the point where it feels like you're watching a made-for-TV Hallmark movie. Also, maybe it's just me, but they should have renamed this. But why it's called My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 is beyond me, especially when there's no wedding in this movie. It's just actors going on a vacation for just to do a reunion. Why call it My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 if it's about the reunion?
Or like why make it why tell a movie The Hangover Part 3 where there's no hangover in it?
Yeah, really. It just doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's just me, but that really irritates me to no end. When you call something My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 and yet there's no wedding. Like what kind of shit is that? Like what kind of sense does that make? Seriously. Yeah, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 is one of the laziest and most shamelessly cynical, boring, idiotic, and annoying films I've seen this entire year. And without a doubt, this is heading on my list for one of the worst movies I've seen in 2023. If you could there was nothing redeeming in this movie whatsoever. I just could not find one single good thing about the film. Not one single thing. And if you haven't guessed, I'm giving My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. Oops. Ah, shit. And if you haven't guessed, I'm giving My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 a 0 out of 10 or an F. Fuck this movie.
All right. Next up, we have El Conde. This is Pablo Larraín's latest film about a 250-year-old vampire seeking death after a pretty tough life and the people around him. I like to compare this to Asteroid City earlier this year, in that the story is kind of all over the place with so many characters and plot threads to catch up on. Plus, given it's the same director of Jackie and Spencer, it's got a slow pace, but this time I just feel like it. I just feel like it could have been cut a few minutes here and there. However, I did enjoy the performances and musical score, as well as the production values and the unique vampire lore. Hey, that rhymed. So while this may not be among the director's strongest, I still recommend this if you're in the mood for this art house vampire period piece film. Overall, El Conde gets my seal of approval.
Nice.
Next, we have Dumb Money. This is a movie that features an ensemble cast who try their best to make this story about the sunrise in GameStop stock, the next Social Network or Wolf of Wall Street. Unfortunately, despite Greg Gillespie's best efforts and a solid soundtrack, this was just a sale of those two movies. The characters aren't really all that interesting, the story isn't really that engaging, and it was kind of a snooze throughout. I guess you can watch this movie if you want, but don't expect the Oscar contender this movie thinks it is. I'll give it the seal of accuracy.
Dumb Money was all right. I'm in agreement with you, Søren. It's an all right movie. I mean, this is one of those Dumb Money is one of those movies where it tries so hard to be like The Social Network mixed with The Wolf of Wall Street and The Big Short, with the way they told the story involving the game shop short squeeze, which happened in January 2021. But it falls very flat due to how rushed and messy it felt. And then, Now, this isn't a terrible movie by any means. It's well directed. The acting was terrific, especially from Paul Dano, who nails it as Keith Gill. Pete Davidson, Vincent D'Onofrio, America Ferrara, Nick Offerman, Anthony Ramos, Sebastian Stan, Shailene Woodley, and Seth Rogen also deliver some excellent performances in the film as well. The editing is solid, and there's a few humorous moments in the film that the film has too. And the cinematography is fantastic too, and so is the soundtrack. Unfortunately, the story was nothing but a rushed and muddled mess. Although the film did have decent dialogue, the script could have used a lot of work with its characters and tone. Especially the tone, it felt so uneven at times. And speaking of uneven, of an uneven mess, that's what I found the pacing to be also an uneven mess as well. Sometimes it's like moving along at a normal pace, and then other times it's just then it's rushing, and then it's like slow as a snail. It's also filled with cliches that you've seen in other films before, especially the David versus Goliath-esque story. And the ending was also a rushed mess. Excuse me. Overall, Dumb Money is well acted and well directed. It has some memorable moments here and there, but the film was sadly a rushed and underwhelming mess. 5 out of 10 or C+. I really did not like this. I really wanted to love this movie, but this just didn't do it for me.
Next is A Haunting in Venice. Unlike the previous two Hercule Poirot movies with Kenneth Branagh, this particular outing boasts a further emphasis on thrills and atmosphere. And just like those two movies, the production values and casting are all on point. Unfortunately, like those two movies, this movie suffers from uninteresting characterizations and slow pacing that bog those movies down. So if Kenneth Branagh wants to continue playing this iconic character, I can only hope he improves on his writing as well as his directing. I'll give A Haunting in Venice a seal of accuracy.
Well, after being disappointed with the first two movies, I could definitely say A Haunting in Venice was actually solid. It's easily the best of the three. This is one where they actually managed to finally get it right. Although it still has its issues. It does have its share of cliches that you've seen in other mystery films before. The pacing was an uneven mess, and the screenplay by Michael Green really could have used some more work with the side characters since they felt underdeveloped. Despite that, though, this was a solid movie. Solid story, even despite its cliches. It's very well directed by Kenneth Branagh, who also, once again, nails it with his performance as Hercule. And Tina Fey was surprisingly very good in this movie, and she had some funny moments in the film as well. And Michelle Yeoh is also great in the film as well. And Jude Hill, who you may remember from Belfast a couple of years ago, is in this movie, and he was great. He was also great too in this one. The musical score was great. The cinematography was terrific. Excellent production values and costume design. It's atmospheric when it comes to its mystery and gothic elements. And not only was the ending and not only did I find the ending to be satisfying, but unlike the last two movies where I predicted the twist, here the twist felt unpredictable. I mean, without spoiling what happens, they revealed this twist that actually caught me off guard, and I did not expect coming. So, yeah, overall, I liked it. 7 out of 10 or B.
Next movie though is Expendables.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Talk about the pure definition of too little, too late. After our first movie, which was garbage, a second which was pretty good, and a third which was meh, this movie makes me want to apologize to the first one. This movie takes everything that made the last two movies enjoyable, burns it, and spits out its corpse. Outside of Jason Statham, who's at least trying, the rest of the cast just looks bored out of their mind. Megan Fox especially acts like old people fuck. The The action scenes are complete garbage. The special effects are even worse. The story. What story? It's just a
What
collection of.
story even is there?
It's just a collection of action sequences put together in such a way that make an hour 40 movie seem like 5 hours by comparison. I don't know why they wanted to get this one more go, and frankly, I don't give a shit. The important thing is, this movie bombed so hard that it'll be a miracle for them to even greenlight another one of these things. I'm giving this piece of shit the Silver Age.
Folks, I have a competition. Folks, Fool's Paradise is facing a competition for the worst film of the year so far. Oh my God. This isn't just one of the worst action films I've ever seen in my life. It's one of the, as well as one of the worst sequels I've ever seen. It's one of the most reprehensible and pathetic films, action films, I've ever seen in my life. There are so many things wrong with this movie. From its generic and bland plot. Like, what plot even is there? Seriously. From its horrendous writing, especially with its dialogue and characterization, to its terrible directing, from the acting, especially from Stallone, and who feels horribly wasted, Statham, who tries his best, but his talent is wasted due to how poorly written his character felt, and Megan Fox. I have never been a fan of Megan Fox whatsoever. She's one of those actresses where she feels like a computer generated model in a porn movie. And to say she acts like this in this movie, yeah, one of the worst performances of the year, easily. The soundtrack was awful. It has some of the worst cinematography I've seen this year due to how much of a shaky mess this was throughout. Yeah, you knew I was going to bring that back. The editing was atrocious. The pacing was a sluggish mess. The action sequences are some of the worst I've seen in the movie this entire year due to how poorly choreographed, shot, and edited they were. And not only is it filled with cliches that you've seen in other films before, Metal Man Fan 2004, that explains so well why it's poorly directed. That explains so well. But tell you what, there's this thing that happened at the end of the film that really pissed me off to no end. And that's the twist. I gotta talk about this twist because this movie, this was the biggest reason why this is already battling Fool's Paradise for the worst film of the year. So, spoiler warning, whatever. You shouldn't see this movie. Here we go. I'm gonna spoil the shit out of this. So early on in the film, we see that Sylvester Stallone's character, Barney Ross, during a fight with a terrorist, Barney Ross, played by Sylvester Stallone, dies in a helicopter crash, which you thought, oh, okay, so Stallone's character is dead, and that means it's up to Statham's character to continue to pass the oh god, I forgot what the sentence was. So okay, let me rephrase that. So that Stallone's character is dead. You would think that the torch would be passed on to Statham's character. Well, it does, except there's one problem. Towards the end of the film, during Statham's fight, there was a helicopter that appears right in front, right behind him, and guess who was in the helicopter the whole time? Sylvester Stallone's character, Barney Ross. And what was his reasoning for it? What was his reasoning for being alive all this time? He faked his own death. I couldn't have said it better myself. Seriously, this is one of the worst uses of character derailment I've ever seen on film. So, not only did you waste Sylvester Stallone in the film, you made his character Barney Ross into such a despicable piece of shit. You destroyed the charm that Barney Ross had in the first 3 movies. I mean, say what you want about Expendables 1 and 3. I didn't like those movies, but at least Barney Ross had a lot of charm in those films. This, they took away that charm. The charm is gone. I have no idea what the writers were thinking when they thought this was a good idea. This is without a doubt one of the worst movies of the year. It is reprehensible. It is poorly made, and it's just all around just a clusterfuck of a mess. Yeah, without a doubt, it's joining my Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 in getting this 0 out of 10 or a big fat F. Fuck this movie. Fuck this movie up its own. You know what? Fuck it. Fuck this movie. Fuck it straight to hell with a dirty dick. I'm so glad this piece of shit bombed at the box office. That's all I gotta say about this. All right, I have to talk about my next movie. My next movie is It Lives Inside, and
that's what she said.
Sorry. Okay, so It Lives Inside. So basically what this movie is about is it's one of the producers of Get Out, and let me look this up really quick. I'm sorry. All right, there we go. So desperate to fit in at school, Sam rejects her East Indian culture and family to be like everybody else. However, when a mythical demonic spirit latches onto her former best friend, she must come to terms with her heritage to defeat it. Now the premise seemed promising, and given that it's from the producers of Get Out, you would think that this would be a really good social commentary on like the Indian culture and racism, right? Unfortunately, that wasn't the case because It Lives Inside wasn't that great. Unfortunately, I was disappointed with the way this turned out. Now that's not to say it's without its positives. Like for one thing, it's very well directed. Not only do you see the vision and passion he had behind the camera, but how he shoots the actors as well, how he shoots the scenes as well as the actors is outstanding. It's well acted, especially from Megan Shuri, who delivers such a brilliant breakthrough performance as Sam. The cinematography was terrific. The visual effects were very good, and there are also some great use of practical effects, especially with how they designed the demon. The musical score was haunting, and there's a few creepy and eerie atmospheric moments here and there that legitimately had me gasping and on the edge of my seat. Unfortunately, the story was underwhelming and repetitive, and the screenplay needed a lot more work on not only its dialogue, but with the way it tackled its themes involving isolation and cultural identity. Since it felt like they didn't do much with their given the fact, given the fact that under 90 minutes it's also a horror film, rated PG-13. And it's like, yeah. And they try to provide some social commentary involving racism, assimilation, and Hindu community. But again, they didn't explore it all that much and show glimpses of it due to the film being, as I stated before, rated PG-13. The editing was a choppy mess. Since there were a few times in the film where the movie cuts to black before resuming to the next scene, which got annoying real quick. And the pacing was also an uneven mess. Sometimes it moves along nicely with its story, and then other times it feels so sluggish. It has its share of cliches that you've seen in other films before, and the ending felt rushed and underwhelming. Overall, it's well acted and has some creepy moments here and there, as well as a good premise, but it lives inside as unfortunately one of those movies where not only was it not scary, but it also felt dull and underwhelming. And you know what? It's disappointing too, given the fact that the distributor for the film is also by Neon, who's made some really good movies in the past, like the Academy Award winning Parasite, Spencer, and Pig. But this is sadly one of their weakest movies. And I know you didn't like this movie, Søren, but I love Triangle of Sadness. So to see that it lives inside is like one of their weakest movies in their belt. It's a shame, honestly. It's not a terrible movie, but it's not something I'm going to remember for. I'm not going to remember in like weeks to come. 5 out of 10 or C+.
Next, we have Flora and Son. After seeing this movie in Sing Street, I really need to get into John Carney's filmography. This is a feel-good film about the relationship between a young woman, her angsty son, and the guitar teacher she may have a personal connection with. Precise solid direction and wonderful songs. The cast especially makes it worth seeing, especially the chemistry between Eve Hewson, Owen Kinlan, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. If you're looking for the Irish feel-good film of the year, this is it, as I'll give it the seal of cinema.
This is one of the better movies I've seen in 2023. Flora and Son is such an uplifting, charming, and entertaining feel-good film that feels like a perfect reminder on how, as human beings, music is important to us. And it definitely shows with this one, because this is a really good movie. Eve Hewson and Joseph Gordon-Levitt both delivered such terrific performances in the film, and they also had great chemistry as well. The soundtrack is absolutely wonderful. It's one of the best I've heard this in a movie this entire year, especially with some of the original songs John Carney wrote for the film, which was nothing short of outstanding. It's well shot, well directed. The writing was very good. The story had me emotionally invested throughout. It's nicely edited, and there's a lot of funny moments throughout the entire movie. If I had to point out a couple issues I have with the film, it's that the first 15 minutes of the film suffers through some pacing issues here and there. And it wasn't until Flora meets Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character that the movie gets going, that the movie immediately picks up. Also, there were a couple of arcs involving a couple side characters, including Jack Rayner's dad's character, that felt underdeveloped, and I wish they could have explored more of it. But besides that, though, this is one of the better movies I've seen in 2023, and I'm going to give Flora and Son a 9 out of 10 or an A-. Very good movie. I highly recommend it. If you have Apple TV Plus, check this one out. If you'll excuse me, I'll be right back for a second. But Søren, you may continue.
All right. Since Nick's gone, I'm going to be talking about the little series of short films that I entitled The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar and Three More. So with the recent collaboration between Netflix and the World Doll Estate, one of the most ambitious projects was to contact Wes Anderson in terms of making a few short films based on some of the world's most famous short stories. The result was a delightfully whimsy and quirky experience with a limited yet outstanding cast and Wes's signature eye for visuals. A couple of the shorts I felt were a bit aimless and slow, but I still recommend them as well. How I rank the shorts: number 4 would be The Rat Catcher, number 3 would be The Swan, second's the Henry Sugar short, and number 1 for me is Poison. As for this whole collection, I'll give it an enthusiastic seal of approval. And next up is The Creator. This is the latest movie by Godzilla and Rogue One's Gareth Edwards, about how the discovery of a major technical development leads to future war against AI. Now, I don't think this is the masterpiece Gareth clearly thinks it is. Besides the story being The Last of Us meets The Terminator, I felt it was a tad convoluted at times. Plus, the pacing can be a bit all over the place, and none of the characters, besides John David Washington and the little cyborg girl he meets, are really that complex or memorable. Regardless, this movie really has its vision with its beautiful cinematography and state-of-the-art special effects. And it touches on some interesting commentary that isn't just AI automatically sucks. So while this isn't the next District 9 or Ex Machina, I'd say go see it if you're willing to give original films a chance. I'll give The Creator the seal of approval.
I see you're talking about The Creator, so I might as well step in and say this. I didn't quite love it as much as I thought I would. I mean, it's no District 9, Blade Runner, or some of the other sci-fi classics, but I really like this movie a lot. The story felt well crafted and well structured. Gareth Edwards' directing was fantastic. The acting was terrific, especially from John David Washington, Gemma Chan, Kenwana Tanabe, although he's not in the film that much, but that's beside the point. To Alan Sal's and Janny, to the little girl that played the AI robot. She was great. Madeline Una Foyles. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but she was fantastic, and the chemistry between her and John David Washington was fantastic. Hans Zimmer's musical score was terrific, and so was the cinematography. This also has the best visual effects I've seen in the movie this entire year due to how well detailed and realistic they looked. I mean, this movie cost over $80 million to make, and yet the visual effects in this movie look even better. Look more well made than a $200 million movie.
The Flash take notes.
Yeah, really. Yeah, really. It's brilliantly paced. The action sequences are fantastic, especially with this one scene taking place on a bridge. Like, whoa. And the film has excellent production design as well. However, what kept this movie from being one of my favorites of 2023 is how I felt the screenplay by Edwards and Chris Weitz wrote. How I felt the screenplay that Gareth Edwards and Chris Weitz wrote for the film could have used some improvement, mainly when it came to 80% of the characterization. There were some editing choices made in the film that came across as being uneven at times, and the themes involving religion, the role of AI, the brutality of war, and the building blocks of life and society honestly felt disjointed and undercooked. But that's just me. Overall, it may not be the next sci-fi classic I hoped, but I overall found The Creator to be a well-acted, visually stunning, and exhilarating sci-fi flick that also feels like a perfect commentary on what our world could look like if we get too carried away with overusing artificial intelligence. So, 8 out of 10 or a B+. It's not one of my favorites of the year, but it is a very good movie that I do recommend checking out.
Next, I have a movie called Jeanne du Barry. As Johnny Depp's comeback role after his whole controversy and his first role in a French film, this should have been at least a solid period piece. And he, along with Maywin in the title role, Leah cast a solid performances alongside colorful production values and a solid musical score. Unfortunately, the problem lies in the screenplay, which goes from plot point to plot point with little to nothing to go off them. Then the pacing is really slow for a 2-hour movie, resulting in the movie being somewhat boring. So while this isn't bad per se, this should have been way better, and it'll have to sell for the seal of adequacy. Next up is the latest horror sequel, Saw X. Now, to give a little perspective on my feelings toward this movie, I've only seen the first movie, which I hear is the only legit good one, since this is supposed to bridge the gaps between parts 1 and 2. So I don't know about the whole Saw franchise as a whole, but as a direct sequel, I say this holds a candle to the first one. Unlike most of the other ones, which I hear are nothing more than gory torture porn, this one actually goes into the psychology of the characters, especially Tobin Bell, who is fantastic as the anti-hero John Kramer. He's a kind of character where you know what he's doing to these scummy victims is wrong, but you actually feel for him considering what happened to him. I will say that even though the first half was really engaging, the second half where he actually tortures the scamming doctors, while still good, is kind of repetitive and can be a bit meandering. Also, Shawnee Smith is back as Amanda, and you can tell that despite this movie taking place directly after the first one, she clearly aged 20 years since that first one. So while I can't say this is the Empire Strikes Back of the horror genre, I still say this is a return to form, as I'll give Saw X the seal of approval.
This was easily one of the biggest surprises I've seen this entire year. As a guy who's never been a fan of like the Saw franchise, minus the first film, and you know what, to some extent the second film, I really enjoyed. I was so surprised at how much I really liked this one. Um, it's not without its issues though. I mean, here's what I'll say about the film. I really like the way the story was structured, like especially with it being like a character study, unlike John Kramer. It's the writing was solid. It's nicely directed. Um, nicely directed. Tobin Bell steals the show once again as John Kramer. Um, the rest of the acting was very good too. The cinematography is terrific. The musical score was great. The editing was solid, and I really enjoyed most of the traps throughout the. I really enjoyed most of the traps throughout the entire movie since they had me on the edge of my seat. However, and the ending was really satisfying too. I also really liked the way it ended too, and the use of practical effects was, especially for the gore scenes, were very well done. But it's not without its issues. There was one trap they threw in the film which I did find to be a bit underwhelming. There were a couple side characters that did feel uninteresting, and you could tell they were going to die anyway because of how they were a part of this scheme that I'm not gonna get into that much that much of. And the pacing did feel a bit uneven at times, but that's it. I really enjoyed this film. It's one of the biggest surprises of the year, and overall, I'm giving Saw 10 or Saw X an 8 out of 10 or B plus.
All right, we talked about one good horror sequel, and now we're gonna get.
Oh no. No, 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 no! Oh no. We have to talk about this.
Okay. The Exorcist movies is a franchise that's the definition of a wave of quality. The first one's a classic, the second one was boring as fuck, third one's pretty good, The Beginning is one of the worst movies ever made, and Dominion is pretty underrated in my book. And after seeing this movie, I gotta say, I thought Exorcist The Beginning was horrendous. But this one's pretty bad too. Even though some of the cast members are doing their best, their characters are so bland that I can't even tell you one of their names to save my life. Not just that, the music is so stock and the cinematography is so bland. And besides suffering from the Exorcist movie cliches and stupid jump scares you've seen before, this movie has some of the worst writing I've experienced in these movies. First of all, why the fuck was Aaron Burstyn in this movie? I mean, they go to her for advice.
I'll get to that in a bit. I will get to that in a bit because how they treated her character was insulting.
I mean, they go to her for advice on exorcising these two girls, even though she had nothing to do with the original exorcism. And even then, she claims she wasn't involved in because of some patriarchy bullshit. And even when she goes to try to confront the demons, she just gets pushed to the side like it's nothing. Seriously, she was about as useful as wet toilet paper. Not just that. Not just that. Not just that. It has an ending that's about as satisfying as getting scammed. Trust me, I know. This is Priest's character who pops out to confront them only to get killed off just like that. And the movie completely rips off The Dark Knight, where the exorcists have to choose which one of the girls gets to live, only for the demons to kill the chosen girl. But wait, there's more. With Aaron Burstyn blinded and hospitalized, guess who comes to visit her in the final scene of the movie?
Regan McNeil.
Yep, her cunting daughter.
You okay, man? Holy shit. Folks, we apologize for this insanity. Folks, we apologize for this technical insanity, but oh my God.
Okay.
All right.
Like I said, this isn't quite as bad as Exorcist at the beginning because at least this was a real movie. And it's slightly better than The Heretic because it actually focuses on an exorcism instead of locusts. Regardless, this still sucks at recapturing what William Friedkin, William Peter Blatty, and Paul Schrader made this franchise as beloved as it is. And Universal, was it really worth paying $400 million for the rights to the franchise? Because while this movie technically broke even in terms of a standalone budget, the overall growth doesn't seem to be nearly as huge as you probably thought it was going to be. I'll be nice enough and nudge this to seal disapproval, but it's safe to say that this movie sucks cocks in hell.
You guys made $400 million on that movie and we didn't see shit! When I saw Fool's Paradise earlier this year, I really thought that was the worst movie I've seen this year, and I didn't think there would be anything else that could possibly give that movie some competition. Well, aside from Expendables 4 that we talked about earlier, but that's a different story. Until I saw this one. This movie is everything wrong with legacy sequels nowadays. This movie is everything wrong with legacy sequels nowadays. This is I couldn't find one redeeming thing about this piece of shit. Yes, I know the actors are trying, but their talents are horribly wasted due to how poorly written their characters felt. Especially, I feel bad for the two girls playing. And I feel bad for the two actresses playing the girls in the film who were possessed, because I know they're trying their best. And they do give solid performances when they're possessed, but again, like the other actors in the film, they're horribly wasted due to how poorly written their characters felt. The story, God, I hated the story of this film. It tries to tie in with like the original Exorcist, and it just does not work whatsoever due to how much of a muddled mess it felt. It's poorly directed. The screenplay, this is easily one of the very worst screenplays of the year. It's filled with characters that feel one-dimensional and paper thin, and the dialogue, the fucking dialogue, feeling so bland as shit. And this movie pulled a Jurassic World Dominion with how they treated the original characters of the original film. Because how they treated Chris McNeil, played by Ellen Burstyn in the film, like an asshole, and for her saying that she didn't witness the daughter's exorcism, when the film clearly when the first film clearly saw that she did, and yet the reasoning for it is because of the fucking patriarchy. Like, are you fucking kidding me? But if you thought that was the worst, if you thought the patriarchy thing was the worst of it, you haven't seen what happens to her next. So during this scene where like Leslie Odom Jr.'s character and Chris McNeil are going to confront her daughter's friend. By the way, that's another reason why she's such an asshole in this. She exploited her daughter's exorcism just for the sole purpose of writing a book and making money.
Huh.
Yeah, real mature are. Yeah, such a good mother you are, Chris McNeil.
You're about as bad as Sidney Loomis in Halloween 2. Not the original Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie version.
The Rob Zombie one, yeah. That movie sucked balls. Anyway. When Leslie Odom Jr.'s character and Chris McNeil are confronting like her daughter's friend, all of a sudden she gets stabbed in the eyes with a crucifix, leaving her blinded for the rest of her life. Why would you do that?
I mean, say what you will about the Star Wars sequels, at least they killed off the legacy characters with dignity.
Exactly. Just why? This I mean, aside from the directing being all over the place and just flat out horrible, I forgot to mention another reason why the screenplay sucks. Exposition overload. Yeah. The musical score, bland as fuck. The cinematography, also bland as fuck, since it looks like made for TV garbage. The editing, some of the absolute worst I've seen this entire year, due to how many times it uses the quick cut edit jump scares. Pacing, sluggish as fuck. This was a 112-minute movie, yet it felt like it was going on for 3 hours. The scares fucking non-existent. No real tension, jump scare score. It's filled with cliches that you've seen in other horror films before, and the CGI effects are abysmal. Since they look like something out of a PlayStation 2 game. Okay, maybe not PlayStation 2, but PlayStation 3 game. And as Søren mentioned with that ending, not only did it feel lackluster, but it felt insulting. Like, how the fuck do you have Reagan come back and forgive her mother when she basically exploited her exorcism for the sake of money?
And I thought Hotel Transylvania 4's ending was insulting.
I know. And honestly, Soren, I'm going to have to be honest. I'm going to have to be honest when I say this. I would rather watch The Exorcist the beginning, and The Exorcist 2, the Heretic, the Heretic. I would honestly rather watch those two films than sit through this fucking piece of shit ever again. And to answer your question, this is worse. This is worse. Yeah, I hated The Sitter, and I hated Your Highness, and I hated Halloween Ends last year. But this makes all three of those movies look like masterpieces in comparison. And you know, it's a shame too that David Gordon Green is has went downhill like this, because he's the same guy that has directed some really good films like All the Real Girls, The Underrated Undertow, Pineapple Express, Joe with Nicolas Cage, and Stronger with Jake Gyllenhaal. So I don't know what the hell is happening to him at this point.
And not to mention Halloween 2018.
Yeah. To some extent, yeah. This is one of the worst horror films I've ever seen in my life. I mean, when you make Insidious The Red Door, and another horror film we're going to mention in a bit, look good in comparison, you fucked up. You have fucked up. This, you know, I've seen a lot of bad movies this year. Like, I've seen some really bad films this year, including the ones that I gave a 0 out of 10 to, like House Party 2023, Fool's Paradise, About My Father, Meg 2, The Trench, Retribution, and from what we previously reviewed, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 and Expendables 4. But watching Exorcist Believer felt like an all-out attack. It felt like an all-out attack on one of my all-time favorite movies. It felt like an all-out attack. I don't think I have ever been this angry and insulted at a movie, at a legacy sequel that completely insulted the original movie since Jurassic World Dominion last year. And to say I hate this almost as much as Jurassic World Dominion would be a huge understatement. I don't know if I hate this more than Fool's Paradise, but let me tell you, I don't know if I hate this more than Expendables 4, but let me tell you, it is already neck and neck with that film. It's the worst film of the year. I hated everything about this piece of shit movie. It is one of the worst horror films I've ever seen in my life, and it is easily going to get a 0 out of 10 or an F. Boo!
The power of compels you. The power of cinema compels you.
The power of cinema compels you. The power of cinema compels you. The power of cinema compels you. Fuck this movie. And the fact that this is the beginning of this trilogy, I'm not prepared for what's about to come in the near future. If this is worse than Believe, if I see any of the sequels that are worse than Believer, I am not going to be happy. Fuck this movie. Fuck this movie. Fuck this movie. Fuck it straight to hell with a dirty dick.
And if you thought that was bad, then believe me when I say that this October, Jason Blum has ruined not one, but 2 beloved horror franchises.
Jason fucking Blum!
And believe me when I say that this movie, Five Nights at Freddy's, at least to me, makes Exorcist Believer look like Hereditary by comparison. I mean, you'd think that a movie like this would actually be a guy trying to survive the Five Nights at Freddy's, right?
Nope.
Instead, it's a huge ripoff of Lilo and Stitch, as after the death of their parents, the older sibling has to fight for custody of the out-of-control younger sister, as they had to deal with an otherworldly entity. However, unlike Lilo and Stitch, the characters are about as enduring as the Manson family. The older brother, played by Judge Hutcherson, probably after he got brainwashed by President Snow, is a complete dumbass. As a mistaken a father at the mall as a child abductor wasn't stupid enough, he can't take care of his younger sister to save his life. Not just that, after he gets a job at this creepy-looking abandoned fun fair, what does he do? He brings a kid along like it's a bring your kid to work day.
Oh my god, yeah, I remember. Oh god, that scene, and yet, that's not even the worst of it. When he brings Abby along, he all of a sudden befriends the animatronics, even though the animatronics are out to kill her. So why would you make that? And yet, towards the end of the film, the animatronics end up being killing machines anyway. So what's the point of making them the heroes?
I don't even know. Not to mention, the policewoman he has a connection with is a complete psychopath, and their younger daughter is so annoying and obnoxious. The editing is all over the place. One minute is so rapid, it's like a 5-year-old made this, and the next scene it just goes on, and it's just so boring. The comedy, if you can call it that, is about as funny as Schindler's List. Especially that one scene where Matt Pat, yes, that's Matt Pat, plays a waiter who says, you know, they say breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but that's just a theory. And the movie tries to make you satisfied when it's revealed that the animatronics contain the souls of these murderers.
What you just did.
And the movie tries to make you satisfied when it's revealed that the animatronics contain the souls of these murdered kids, and the guy behind it is revealed to be the serial killer who the animatronics should murder. But here's the problem. It doesn't feel earned because his subplot isn't brought up until the third act, especially since Matthew Lillard was wasted in this 2-second cameo before being asked off.
Yeah, really.
Honestly, is there any wonder why this was dumped into streaming the same day as theaters? And it's ironic because this movie somehow made more money in its opening weekend than most of the best movies this year in its entire run. I hope you're happy, FNAF fans. And if you want to see this concept done way better, if you want to see this concept done way better in the movie, watch this movie, Willy's Wonderland, as that movie is actually about the concept itself instead of just being a subplot of its own movie. As for this movie, it's getting an easy seal of rage.
Okay, well, yeah, I hate this movie as well, but here's the reason why it's not getting a 0 out of 10.
The animatronics.
Yes, the animatronics. I really like the animatronics in the film. It didn't surprise me that these were the same guys, Jim Henson's. It didn't surprise me that it's actually surprising that they actually got Jim Henson's Creature Shop to do those animatronics. And despite that they're not in the film all that much, the animatronics were actually very well done. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing that I liked about the film. But otherwise, this is. Yeah, we'll talk more about this when we do our worst films of the year list, like either in late December or early January. But I can guarantee you it will be on both of our lists before. Oh, and one last thing. To the people saying that, to these hardcore fanatics saying that, you just don't get it. It's made for us fans, and you have to understand the games more in order to understand. You have to play the games more in order to understand the movie. Shut up with that nonsense. Just
a movie has to stand on its own, okay? And
exactly.
It's going to have to rely on fan service just for the sake of being good. I mean, Why do you think we love Ready Player One and Spider-Man No Way Home so much? Is it because of the fan service? Well, yes, but mostly it's because of the story and characters. Contrast to
Exactly.
that, contrast to that, you have Space Jam: A New Legacy, which is bombarded with fan service. Yet that's one of the worst review movies of the decade.
That's one of the worst movies I've seen this decade so far, without a doubt. It may not have been the worst film I saw from 2021, but it was definitely deserving of the top 3 of that year.
Top
Because
ten
for
for
how much
me,
it got
but
worse
go
and
on.
worse the more I thought about it.
Yeah,
What was that?
top 10 for me, but go on.
Okay. But yeah, to quote one of my former friends, credit to him, by the way. If you're watching this, you know who you are. This is what the hardcore fan base of Five Nights at Freddy's need to know. This is a motion picture, not a video game. If a film requires you to be a loyal fan or go to a whole different medium in order to understand and or enjoy the film, then the film fails. Just because it's a well-made and successful horror gaming franchise doesn't mean it's going to accommodate well as a movie. It's the film's job to stand out and succeed on its own merits. Aspects of what makes a video game good doesn't translate the same way for a film. Fan service does not equal quality, and fan service alone does not equal a redeeming film. And I completely agree. I completely agree. Yeah, we'll talk more about this. We'll talk more about this when we do our worst films of 2023 list. But to save some time, Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most reprehensible horror films I've seen this year, and it is definitely going to get a 1 out of 10 or a D minus. Again, I don't hate this. I don't think it's the worst. It's one of the worst horror films I've ever seen, as you think, Soren. But make no mistake, guys, this is a bad movie. A bad movie that is not worth your time. And honestly, fans of Five Nights at Freddy's deserve better than this.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing we saved this movie for last because our last movie is Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, hell yes!
It's safe to say that Martin Scorsese has done it again. The best way to describe this is if Goodfellas was a Western, a kind of sort of Western. The screenplay by Scorsese and Eric Roth does a fantastic job expressing emotion involving Leonardo DiCaprio as he's torn between living to his uncle's criminally murder out legacy or protecting what's best for his Osage wife and family. Him, Lily Gladstone, Robert De Niro, and Brendan Fraser are all standouts in this massive cast. The cinematography and production values are nothing short of stunning. The musical score is hauntingly beautiful, and the pacing made this 3.5 hour movie flow and feel more like 2.25 hours. This
Yeah.
is an easy contender for the top 5 at the moment, as this is yet another achievement in Scorsese's filmography, which I'm giving an easy seal of cinema.
To say that Killers of the Flower Moon is one of the year's very best films would be a huge understatement. Killers of the Flower Moon is another masterful addition to Martin Scorsese's filmography, since what he's crafted is a powerful, gripping, compelling, exhilarating, and informative Western film involving greed, betrayal, and murder on the Osage Reservation, as well as a perfect lesson and reminder on how history can sometimes repeat itself if we're not careful. And its 3.5 hour runtime felt justified. I mean, there's so much I loved about this movie, like from its story to its writing to its wonderful directing by Scorsese. Seriously, give him that Best Director nomination, please. The acting was terrific, especially from Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, who both deliver some of the finest performances of their careers. Lily Gladstone needs to get nominated for best supporting actress because my God, she was absolutely terrific in this movie. All the other actors are fantastic, but it's Lily Gladstone that really gives out. Right now, it's between this and Greta Lee in Past Lives for the best performance I've seen from an actress in 2023. But I think I will not be surprised if she ends up being my pick. But that's how wonderful she was in the film. The soundtrack was fantastic. The cinematography was terrific. Thelma Schoonmaker's editing was also fantastic. This is one of the very best editings I've seen in the movie this entire year. It's pacing. It's expertly paced, even for a 3.5-hour movie. The production values and costume design are absolutely terrific, and its themes involving grief. Even for a 3.5 hour. Oh shit! Oh shit! Sorry about that. Anyway, and the production values and costume design are absolutely some of the best I've seen in the movie this entire year. Since it really does feel like you're back in the 1920s, and on top of that, it also has one of the very best endings I've seen in the movie this entire year. And the way, and you know what, another thing too, the way the movie handled its themes involving greed, betrayal, the way the movie handled its theme involving betrayal felt not only well executed, but very relatable, especially for those, especially for, I'm not going to say this on camera due to personal reasons, but what's been going on in my family recently is just heartbreaking to say the least. With the recent betrayal, with the recent betrayal, I'm not gonna get into what it is due to personal reasons, but let's just say it's involving like money, and how the movie captured that betrayal, like its theme of betrayal, well on screen. That was especially when Lily Gladstone finds out about Leonardo DiCaprio's character towards the end of the film. That really hit me hard, and it was something I definitely related to a lot. Right now, yeah. Overall, Killers of the Flower Moon is another masterpiece of Scorsese. It's powerful, gripping, riveting, compelling, and exhilarating, and it's without a doubt one of the year's very best films. It is easily one of the year's very best films. Right now, it's between this and Oppenheimer for my number one film of the year. I don't know which one will make it to number one, but I can guarantee you this will be an easy pick for the top two, without a doubt. This is absolutely one of the year's very best films, and I am definitely going to give Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon a 10 out of 10 or an A+. Well done, Scorsese. Well done. One more time. Well done, sir.
All right, that's it for our reviews, and now a couple announcements. Firstly, for the future of this podcast, I figured I'd do something special during the Halloween episodes. I figured the best way to commemorate the yearly occasion is by doing tier lists of various horror franchises, one franchise per year. And with the latest one just released this month, I thought the first franchise to tier rank is the Exorcist movies.
All right, let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and put this right here. There we go.
All right, so as you can see, all 6 Exorcist movies are up there. So here we go. First, Exorcist is an easy one. It's an easy yes. It's one of the greatest and most beloved horror movies for a reason. It hasn't been topped, and I doubt it ever will. Exorcist 2: The Heretic was just plain boring. So, yeah. Exorcist 3, I felt it to be pretty underrated in my opinion.
Very underrated.
I mean, George C. Scott and Chucky actor Brad Dourif alone are worth the price of admission.
Yes.
Exorcist of Begin is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It's cluttered, it's clusterfuck, and you can tell that this was a clash between 2 different directors. And say what you will about Justice League, at least that movie tried to be entertaining in spite of the setbacks. This movie didn't.
And that would be released years later.
Yeah. now we have the Paul Schrader cut, which is Dominion. Another film to be pretty underrated. Not masterpiece, but there's tension, there's intrigue, and it actually felt like a true Exorcist sequel. And now for Exorcist Believer, and Nick, I know I'm being extremely generous, but I'm giving this a D because frankly, the cast members alone kept it from being an F, and frankly, I've seen so much worse. So there we go. This is my official tier list of the Exorcist movies.
All right, sweet.
And for my other big announcement. So, with the first two installments in my Milo Pony fanfiction trilogy completed, being the Storm King and the School of Friendship, I bet you're wondering how the trilogy capper will be like, seeing how it's the one where it all comes full circle in the cartooniverse, the cartoon cinematic universe. Well, since the Teen Titans Go fanfiction takes place sometime after the second one, I guess you can say this is kind of a spiritual successor, a fact which will be further supplemented with the title I'm gonna show here.
Let's see it. There it is.
Yep, My Little Pony Beyond the Multiverse is the title of this upcoming installment. Now, unlike The Storm King, which is a direct adaptation of the My Little Pony movie, and The School of Friendship, which is a reworked version of the Season 8 storyline with elements of Season 7 and 9, this would be a relatively original story, and the logline I have here is as follows. After the events of Teen Titans Go Unfold the Multiverse, introduced Twilight Sparkle and her friends to a much bigger world than they could have imagined. They must protect everything they hold dear, both old and new. When a rip in the multiverse raises stakes higher than the entire main seven alone can handle. With thrilling action set pieces and 5 original songs, My Little Pony Beyond the Multiverse is set to be bigger, darker, and more emotional than before. So yeah, coming later this year is the culmination of the My Little Pony trilogy and Phase 2 of the cartoon universe itself, My Little Pony Beyond the Multiverse.
Nice.
And there we go.
Well, looks like we completed another episode of the FilmBrony podcast. Hope you guys had a lot of fun watching tonight's podcast. I sure as hell did, and we will meet again in November for the 42nd episode of the FilmBrony podcast. And as always, be sure to subscribe to Søren Saunders' YouTube channel. The link is in the description below. Give him the love he absolutely deserves. He's a great YouTuber and a great person to talk to. And well, I hope you guys have a wonderful Halloween. And November 1st is just around the corner. So I'm already excited for Thanksgiving and Christmas to come up. So anyway, we'll see you all in November. We'll see you on November for episode 42. And as always, hope you all have a great Halloween, and we will see you in November. So long.